Hey everyone, so let's talk about things you should never say in a job interview. Now here's an article that appeared in the Muse. It lists 30 things you should never say in a job interview. Let's go down them and see if they make any sense. Okay, number one. So tell me what you do around here. Yeah, this is probably not great because the thing you want to do in an interview is you don't want to indicate that you have no idea what the company does, no idea who the interviewer is, and no idea what the job is about. You're expected to understand those things and have done a little bit of research before you show up for the job interview. So saying things like this indicates that you kind of haven't done that. So that would not be the greatest thing to say. Okay, number two, my last company, and number three, I didn't get along with my boss. Both of these are very similar. You never want to badmouth your previous employers, even if they were a gang of idiots, and even if they did some pretty silly things and annoyed you a hell of a lot. You don't want to badmouth them. You don't want to talk about them and do that kind of stuff, because the idea is that if you badmouth other people, you're giving the impression that you will badmouth this employer if they were to hire you, and that makes a very bad first impression. So don't talk about that. Same with bad-mouthing your previous boss, even if your boss was terrible. And let me tell you, a lot of people have had to deal with horrible bosses. This is a very common thing. This is the number one reason why people quit jobs. So most people have tales to tell when it comes to this stuff. But you should never disclose that stuff in a job interview. Sometimes they will ask you about it specifically just to see if you will say anything bad about your previous bosses. And if you do, you fail. So always keep that in mind. Okay, I'm really nervous. Well, this isn't the end of the world, but the bottom line here is that you don't want to say anything that either makes the interviewer feel awkward or indicates that there could be a problem with you. Okay, now if you say I'm really nervous, that could do both. It could make the interviewer feel a little awkward, I suppose, and it could also signal that there's a problem with you. Maybe you're a very nervous person. Maybe you've got something to hide. So don't say stuff like this. It just complicates things and it can be taken very badly. I'll do whatever. Okay, another bottom line for job interviews is you want to give the impression that you actually care about the job and you're actually passionate about it. Like it says here, this is absolutely true. Now, yes, a lot of us interview for menial jobs that nobody in their right mind would really be passionate about. But nevertheless, this is what recruiters and hiring managers are looking for. So you don't want to give the impression that you don't really care about what you do. Okay, because that's a red flag right there. The reason why somebody might say this is they could have good intentions and they're trying to indicate that they're flexible. And that's great, but when you say literally, I'll do whatever, or something like it, that can backfire. It gives the impression that you don't really care too much about the work you do. Okay, number 6. I know I don't have much experience, but... yeah, this is a bad one because you never want to say anything negative about yourself in a job interview. And this person is saying something negative right here. I don't have much experience. Okay, so remember, you only ever want to say positive things about yourself. Okay? Don't talk about the negative aspects of yourself, just talk about the positive things. And that way you give a very good first impression. Okay? Number 7, it's on my resume. Yeah, like I said before, you don't want to say anything that makes the interviewer feel awkward. Now, sometimes these people actually know what's on your resume, and you're missing the point. Even if they've read your resume and they know it's on there, and they ask you something, they're wanting to hear you say it. They're wanting to, like it says here, they're wanting to evaluate your communication and social skills. Job interviews are about soft skills like communication skills and social skills. That's what they're wanting to see. Okay, so don't say stuff like this. Okay, it makes people feel awkward and it misses the point of the interview. Okay, this one here, the bottom line is you don't want to rehearse answers word for word. You don't want to memorize lines exactly. Just try and keep it a little bit organic. okay, if at all possible. Perfectionism is my greatest weakness. This is a good one. Now, one of the more common job interview questions is they're going to ask you about your faults. They're going to say, what's your greatest weakness? Or what's your weakness? Or why shouldn't we hire you? Or, what's a negative trait about you? Something like that. And don't say this, because this is such a cliche. And you know what? They've heard it before. Okay, it's kind of a groaner. So don't say this. Think of something else. I've actually created videos on my main channel that tell you in detail what you could say here. I'm the top salesperson at the company, and I have 2 semesters worth of Spanish. I wouldn't worry about that one. I don't think that's that important. I think outside the box. This is not the worst thing in the world to say, but just remember, thinking outside the box, that is a cliche. Most people use this expression constantly without really knowing what it means. So if you mean that you're creative, say that you're creative. Okay, if you mean that you have advanced problem-solving skills, say you have advanced problem-solving skills. Don't say, I think outside the box. Because even if that's true, this expression has been so overused lately that it carries some negative vibes to it. So don't use that. Okay, number 12. I increased our social following 25%. Yeah, using a lot of crutch words like and I mean, I use quite a bit. I'm using it in this video. The bottom line is the better you speak, the more professional your level of language, the more capable and the more desirable you will appear as a potential employee. So try and work on your language as much as possible. Try not to talk like you're in, the 5th grade, and you'll be fine. Okay, I don't think this is particularly important. Don't use a lot of sort of management double talk. Okay, say what you mean. There's a lot of vague terminology, like in this case, strategic alliances and cutting edge technology. I mean, what does that actually mean? If you talk about providing solutions or something, what does that actually mean? Be specific. Don't fall back on a bunch of buzzwords. Okay, like here, for example, people using acronyms in their answer when it's an acronym that is not in common parlance. I've encountered a lot of people that do this. They use these acronyms that, like you're supposed to know what they're talking about. It might be some acronym that's specific to their company, and they tell you thinking that you will understand what that is. Of course you won't. So, that's just not super professional. Don't use a lot of acronyms. If there's any chance that people might not know what the acronym means, spell it out for them. Give them the long version of it. Saying, I don't know. Here's the deal. Invariably, you're going to encounter questions that just stump you. They might ask you some really off-the-wall question that could be, quite frankly, very silly, and it stumps people. Now, look, if that happens, a good thing is, first of all, don't let it get to you. Just say, look, do you mind if we come back to that question, or could you give me a minute to think about that? That's I'm going to need a minute or two to think how to respond to that. Something like this. Don't say, I don't know, or you got me there, or something like that. Okay, not the end of the world, but, it leaves a better impression if you don't say stuff like that. That's a minor one. Okay, how much vacation do I get? Well, once again, this gives the impression that you're only out for yourself. You don't really care about the job. All you care about is what you can get out of it, and that makes a very bad first impression. Okay, employers are looking for people that are actually passionate about doing that job, and whether or not that makes sense or not to you, you want to give that impression. Okay, so don't say things that indicate that all you really care about is what you're getting out of it. Okay? Even though that might be the reality, it's just poor social skills to sort of say that bluntly, okay? It makes people feel awkward, it leaves a bad impression. Okay, same with this one. How soon do you promote employees? Once again, it could be interpreted as you're just trying to get as much as you can out of the job, and you don't really care too much about the job itself. Whether or not it's true, When you say things like this, it gives that impression. Okay. Nope, no questions. Here's the deal. Usually at the end of job interviews, they ask you, do you have any questions for us? And you should always have questions. You should always be able to ask them a couple of questions. If you don't, it signals that you don't really care about the job. You're not interested in the job. You might be looking for a paycheck and that's it, and you'll do anything, or you're desperate. And that's not an impression that you want to make, because that makes you look undesirable as a candidate. Okay, telling off-color stories. You know, you got to censor yourself a little bit in a job interview. You're not hanging out with your best friends. These are people that, you know, even if they're super amiable and pleasant, they're really not your friends. They're your judges. They're there to make an impression, to get an impression of you and judge you accordingly. And so you really don't want to be too off the cuff and say things that might not be super professional. Okay, I don't think this is particularly important. Here, number 22. I'd like to start my own business as soon as possible. And it talks about entrepreneurial ambitions. Now, I personally think that entrepreneurs are awesome. They're highly capable people. However, if you are applying for a job at a company that's employing people, and therefore not a startup, not the best thing to mention, okay? They want to feel certain that you care about the job that you're applying for. Okay, so, you know, starting your own business, telling them that you want to start your own business, that's a total conflict. It goes against the type of employee they're looking for. They're looking for somebody that's going to stay at that company forever and love their job. That's what they're looking for. So you need to make that impression. And saying stuff like this, even if it's true, leaves a bad impression. Okay, keep your language professional. No S-bombs, no F-bombs. Okay, just remember that. Okay, if you're going to tell a story, make sure that the story has an ending. You know, don't tell stories that go nowhere. Once again, not the end of the world, but that's what this is saying. I tend to agree with that. Some people, you know, when they're nervous, they end up talking about things and it just goes off on a tangent. But you got to try and tie it back to either the question they asked you or something relevant about the job. Okay? Do you know when we'll be finished here? Once again, that might make people feel awkward. Seems like you only care about getting the interview over with. And whether or not that's true, that's the impression it gives, and that's you know, that's something negative. You don't want to say that. Here's another one. I'm going through a tough time right now. Now, this is probably accurate for a lot of people who are looking for jobs. Even if it is accurate, don't say it, because once again, it can make people feel awkward, and it could also signal that there's a problem with you, that you're a problematic person. You might have some personal problems they don't know about, and that could be a red flag. So whether or not this is true, you don't want to say it. Sorry, I'm so late. Well, don't be late, okay? Be on time. Sorry, I'm so early. Now, they make a big deal out of this one. I personally don't think this is a big deal. This is going to depend on the person you're dealing with. Okay, if you arrive super early, in this case, they talk about maybe 20 minutes early. I personally don't think that's a big deal. They're making the argument that some people might think it's a big deal. It might make you look desperate or unprofessional or something. But, you know, while that might be true, I wouldn't worry too much about it. If you do arrive early, just don't go inside and wait inside. If possible, wait out of eyesight until about 10 minutes before the interview, and then come into the building or come into the lobby or wherever you're meeting. Would you like to see my references? I don't think this is a problem necessarily. They're talking about being too eager, and they say, like, you know, wait till you're asked for your references. I don't think that's the end of the world. Okay, if you say, would you like to see my references? I guess it depends more on how you say it than saying that. And finally, I just wanted to follow up again. Yeah, follow up a couple of times maybe, but that's it. Don't pester people, and that's more of what you would do after the interview. So those are the 30 things that you should never say in an interview. According to this article, I think most of them make sense. I think they're correct on most of them. There's a couple that aren't the worst things in the world, but there you go. So, as I said, if you are just starting to interview for jobs, learning these is probably a good starting point. So thank you for your attention. I hope you found this helpful. You're awesome, and I will see you on the next video. Take care.